Hi, I'm Chris from Airwindows, and as usual I have a plugin, and as sometimes happens, this is essentially a plugin for one person, but you may have needs similar to that one person, so check this one out. What I'm going to show you today is a plugin called Purist Fade. And the reason I have Purist Fade is because I already had PurestGain, and a mastering engineer who's using my plugins said, this is great, this is absolutely perfect, it's exactly right, except for I can't make the final little drop from almost silence to zero without like a discontinuity. It just, there's a sudden, it goes from 0.001 to 0, and it's noticeable. Other than that, it's perfect. And I was like, well, there's the gain thing. You could go from 0.001 on the fade to 40 dB down, and it seemed like unreasonable. So I thought, why don't I do a version of PurestGain for people who know they're going to be doing only gentle fader moves with the 0 to 1 fader. And let's go into Logic here. And what we can see when I boop over to here is that I've got PurestGain and Purist Fade here, and I'll show you what each of them do. PurestGain has the gain trim, which is the same as Purist Fade, and it has the 0 to 1, which is sort of the movable fader thing. Like this is actually responding to my scroll wheel as well. So you could automate this and go, here's the silent part, and all of a sudden this track is loud, and then it's gone. You could do dynamic mixing moves using this. And it does a good job of smoothing itself out so you're not going to get any zipper noise, which I thought was a pretty significant amount of smoothing. And of course, if you click on the 0, you hear it isn't instantly gone, but it goes pretty fast. Now here's what happens when you do the same thing on Purist Fade. This is an auto fade. So that's what happens when you're at full crank and you literally click on 0 and let it do the fade itself. Now you might ask, like, what is the deal with that? Why would you always want to have a fade that's like, 10 seconds or so? And the answer is not so much, because here's the thing. If you slide this one around, it does go up fairly fast, a little faster than it goes to quiet. It is reacting slower than the other one. So you can still do stuff with it. But here, let me make it quieter. If you're manually fading it, you'll be able to pull it down faster than the auto fade behavior. Like the auto fade behavior, is going from the slowest it can possibly go. And of course you can go slower if you wanted. You just gradually start pulling it back, and it's going to smooth that very nicely. And then by the time you get down to the quiet part, you got your end of your tail. And by the time you go to 0, it's reacting very slowly indeed, and it's smoothing that fade out. But if we wanted to do it fast, what you can do is this. Pull it down faster than it would naturally do. And the last tiny little bit of it will linger a little bit, but you can hear that's faster than the natural, like the full auto is going at a certain rate, but the manual pull down you can pull it down faster than the full auto rate, or you can pull it down more slowly. And of course, small adjustments in around 0 are very, very smoothed out. So there's the deal. That is Purist Fade for you. And I'm going to keep it fairly brisk because, as it happens, I have been busy working on some other stuff that has my full attention, so it's probably going to be next week. If it is not up to your speed, then I'll beg your pardon for a week. But as you know, I'm doing my music stuff with the crazy synthesizer. I have been hanging out with a crew that's quite interesting. It's a group of streamers that hang around with the modular synthesist Colin Benders. He's got a Discord, which is great fun. It's much more fun than mine. Mine doesn't have anything going on in it. So join Colin's Discord instead. And he's been doing a lot of neat stuff with a new sequencer that he's got that lets you do chord progressions and things. And he's got these arpeggios going on the top of the chords that tracks the chords, and it's sitting on a knob, so he can turn the knob, and the speed of the notes like triples and quadruples and goes. It's really fun and exciting. And I'm doing my chord organ stuff, and as it happens, I have just done a bunch of work updating it because I wanted to do various things. For one, by default, the chord organ doesn't let you do glide between notes slower than half a second or so, because it's like, well, why would you want a portamento? And I'm like, but what if I did want a portamento that went, say 30 seconds? Well, I didn't manage to get 30 seconds, but I got 20 seconds of portamento out of it. So my new chord organ firmware will be going up pretty soon. And I also have had this sitting around for a long time, which is sort of my theory for how the chord organ thing is oriented. And I recently dove into that again, so now I have a new version of that, which I'm rethinking as far as generating new chordal things. And I figured out how to do the arpeggio stuff that Colin is so good at. Not exactly the same, but in my own way. So I'm going to be doing that most likely a whole bunch on Tuesday, and that should be fun. So expect me to dive into that music stuff a little bit, and it's kind of what gives me inspiration for the plugin things, so hopefully that'll work out okay for people. And yeah, Purist Fade exists because a mastering engineer was asking for a fade that could run more slowly than PurestGain can manage. And I think it delivers on that pretty much. The reason it's a separate thing under a similar but not the same, it's like not an additional thing, is I think that generally you'll know which one of these you're going to want, and you're going to be wanting the one and not the other. Like if you're doing really dynamic mixing and you're needing to kill sounds in your mixes and stuff, you're probably going to want to run PurestGain, and it'll smooth that stuff out nicely for you. And it'll allow you to go to full silence more quickly and abruptly. But if you're continually doing stuff for mastering, or if what you do in mixing involves like, I'm going to back this off gently, or I'm going to push this up gently, and your dynamic mixing control needs to just be a lot more smooth, this is the one for you. You're going to want this, and you're not going to want PurestGain. Because other than the sort of ballistics of the way that the fade control operates, and I renamed it to just Fade for Purist Fade, even though PurestGain says slow fade, and Purist Fade is way slower, there's not enough room on the plugin to say way slower fade. So anyways, I'm glad to bring you Purist Fade. I hope you like it. the reason I'm doing this and the reason I'm doing like live streams and music streams, it's an hour and 40 minutes at the moment. It goes up and down because it's tied to what I get in the Patreon. Patreon is what keeps me doing all this stuff. And I have a big pile of other plugins to do. But in this case, this is a easily acceptable, easily understandable plugin that could very well replace PurestGain for some of you if you routinely do stuff around your lower control that needs to be slow and have really nice continuous changes. If that's you, I've just replaced PurestGain for you. It has a separate little ID. You can have both of them in the same system. You shouldn't need to. It should be pretty clear. So if this was for you, you know who you are. And me continuing to do stuff like this is supported by Patreon. And yeah, I hope you like it. Thank you.